So we're at Yale School of Public Health, where our esteemed guest of honor, Dr. Jamila Davis and Angelo Pinto. I'm so excited, to welcoming you both for this seminar. I think the students are going to be really excited.
And I'm excited too. So you guys see it. We are at the Yale School of Public Health.
Yes.
And I don't really have to say much, but you already know what it is. It's going down.
It's going down.
To invite them to your campus. So first, let me introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Angelo Pinto. Most of you probably don't know me because I just started in July and I'm super excited to be here. So today, I'm going to introduce Dr. Jamila T. Davis and Angelo Pinto. Let me just read a little bit about them before they start their talk. So first, we'll have a discussion about be the change you want to see and how to change your community through work. So Dr. Jamila T. Davis, she's an author, educator, community activist, and entrepreneur. From a self-made multimillionaire at age 25, her life took a tragic twist. In 2008, she was sentenced to 12 and a half years for bank fraud. From behind bars, Davis embarked on an intense journey of inner healing and restoration. Documenting her findings, she developed a self-help curriculum designed to empower incarcerated women to heal, recognize their potential, and recapture their dreams. While incarcerated, Davis also received numerous college degrees. Most recently, she gained her Doctor of Philosophy degree from Newburgh Seminary. Can we just give a round of applause? Researching life coaching as a tool to dethrone the trauma to prison pipeline. In June 2017, Dr. Jamila T. Davis completed her prison sentence and hit the ground running. Davis now leads as the founder of the VIP Online Academy, where she has helped thousands of students to receive trade and entrepreneurial skills to prepare them for the workforce. And now I'll introduce Angelo Pinto. He is a notable freedom fighter, civil rights attorney, and policy strategist. Most recently, he has co-founded Until Freedom, an intersectional social justice organization that was pivotal in the fight for justice for Breonna Taylor and who were on the ground in Minneapolis during the George Floyd uprisings. Pinto also co-founded Justice League New York City, a task force of the Gathering for Justice, an organization started by global activist, entertainer Harry Belafonte. Justice League led mass demonstrations during the Eric Garner uprisings. In addition, Pinto has been at the forefront of leading key criminal reform initiatives, lending his expertise to procuring the freedom of rapper Meek Mill, elevating the profile of the NYPD 12, as well as creating a legislative campaign to raise the age of criminal responsibilities in New York State, which ends the housing of youth in adult jails and prisons. So can you just please give a round of applause for our speaker.
How y'all doing today? Okay, I am extremely blessed and happy to be here. She told you a little bit about my story, but before I go into me, I would like for you guys this is our presentation that we're going to do. We're talking about be the change you want to see. But I want to go to the next slide. Okay, you could help me navigate that and just let you kind of watch a little bit about what I currently do today. My name is Jamila T. Davis. I am an author, activist, motivational speaker, and the founder of the VIP Online Academy. After being a product of the school to prison pipeline and serving close to a decade in federal prison, I came home on a mission, determined to tell people about the truth, and to dispel the lies that I was told about street life, glamorizing life in the hood, fast money, fast cars. Just as quickly as you get it is just as quickly as it will be taken away. So my life mission today is to tell people about the truth. to share with students the ways that they can overcome adversity and come out on top. Some of the programs that I'm truly proud about are one, our Boss Up Teen Entrepreneurship Program, where we were able to take young children from urban communities and turn them into entrepreneurs. Another program that I'm extremely proud about is our Flipping the Game program. In this particular program, we took folks off the street corner and gave them skill sets in construction. And literally, we watched their lives transform. I'm also tremendously proud of our Esteem Up program. With this program, we took girls that were fighting in the local neighborhood school, and we helped them to transform the energy that they had into confidence. And they created new platforms, including their own businesses. Another piece of my work that I'm extremely grateful for is the East Orange Sweat program. Over the summer, we took 300 kids and helped them to gain life skills and entrepreneurship skills, and they learned while they earned. Another program that I am truly, truly proud about is our Rise Up program, where we took participants who were victims of domestic violence, and we allowed them through this platform the ability to transform their pain into purpose. One thing about it is I'm committed to transformation. All of the programs that I'm vested in is all about showing people how they can take their skill sets and talents and turn them into money and turn them into resources and educational platforms for others. So I live this work, I do this work, and I'm proud about what I do because today I'm living my life on purpose. One of my greatest accomplishments after coming home from prison was doing the necessary research to complete my PhD. Today, I am Dr. Jamila T. Davis. I am also a community practitioner in residence at Seton Hall University. As a professor, I use my lived experience to help transform individuals across the world. My life message is, despite where you come from, and despite the mistakes that you've made in life, if you fall down, it's never too late to dust yourself off and get back up. So that's me. I wanted the film to speak for the work that I do today. But I started off actually here in Connecticut, Danbury Federal Prison. I was inmate number 59253-053. And in that dark place, I realized that I wasn't really fulfilling my dreams or my purpose. I had hung out with the wrong crowd, did the wrong things, and I got my life all messed up. And it was just like something went off when the judge banged the gavel and said, "You're hereby sentenced to serve 12 and a half years in federal prison." I realized that if this was my last day on earth, I would not have completed my purpose, right? I would not have really done the thing that I was supposed to do. So it's that journey that sent me on the mission that I'm on today to become my true self. So this class today is really important to me because I want to make sure that you guys are actually living out your dreams and your purpose, not just success. Because I was successful in the world's terms at 25. I was a multimillionaire doing many things, right? However, I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do. So this course is all about being the change you want to see. And I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about my work and how it came about. Because we believe that there's some formula and some steps for it. Who are you? What were you created to do, right? A lot of us are doing things for people, but it's really not the thing that we were designed to do. Purpose is, consists of the central motivating aims of your life. The reason that you get up in the morning. So a lot of people aren't motivated. How many of you guys know people who have jobs but hate going? Anybody know people? Okay, you see the room is full up? And the reason for that is a lot of people are not living in their why, in their reason, in their purpose, right? It's a motivating factor. It influences your behavior, it shapes your goals, and it actually keeps you on track. So I actually tapped into my purpose by becoming a clerk at recreation in prison, right? So I was like, God, what are you doing to me here? So I'm serving women, but not realizing me serving women and helping to develop curriculum behind bars would actually change my whole life. And I know how it felt for me to make my fellow inmates happy, to see them develop skills behind bars and get ready to leave and think about a brighter future. And I know how that made me feel, and it actually ended up changing my life. So it was me finding my purpose that brought me onto the path that I'm on today. What's your why? What motivates you? What do you care about? For me, I began to care about the people around me because I felt like I was thrown in the trash. Guys, I received a 12.5-year sentence for bank fraud, right? And if any of you guys know, my victim is Lehman Brothers Bank, right? Which is the individuals that caused the crisis. So for me, I'm like, I'm gonna stay in prison for 12.5 years. Like, what sense does this make? But then it began to come to me that I had a reason or a why, because I was on the wrong track. So it was in prison that I found out what really motivates me. And I knew it was providing for my family's success, to leave a legacy, to feel loved, and to do something that would have a positive impact on others. And that's how I begin to create from behind bars the things that I'm going to begin to talk to you about. But my question to you is, what is your why? Why do you do what you do? And that's really important, because when you go through the rough days in life, the why will keep you grounded. What's your story? What are the challenges you face, right? So I learned the hard way that your pain often leads you to purposes. Challenges reveal what you're made of. Oftentimes, the very places in our life, maybe being bullied as a kid or going through some kind of abuse, it actually prepares you for your ministry, your service to the world, right? So the 7 reasons for trials, they help you develop character. Me at a young age, I lacked character, but my pain made me realize the necessity of character. Trials make us compassionate towards others. So for me, it was to begin to become compassionate about the population that I lived around and that I wanted to serve, which is now at-risk youth. Trials humble us. I was very haughty. I had millions of dollars. I was a kid. I'm blowing money fast, and I'm not really realizing that, my haughtiness would actually hinder me. Trials lead us to repentance. I had to repent for some of the things that I did in the past, and I realized that my behavior was not right. Trials increase our faith. For me, it made me go to my higher power. I began to seek God. I went on a journey really trying to find out what my purpose was in life. Trials help you to get the attention of others around you. Me, I had so many people depending upon me, and I was codependent, just doing a lot of things for others that they should be doing for themselves. So when I stepped back, then it made people also pay attention to what they were missing. Trials lead us into our purpose, and we spoke about that. Ultimately, my trial of imprisonment led me to my purpose today. Okay, so now let's talk about it. We're getting into the movement work. How do you create change? What's necessary? The first thing I had to do was look at my network, right? So the network was the people around me that could help me reach others. And for me, my network became my family and my mother. So from behind bars, my mother helped me to create a publishing company. And as a prisoner, I started creating books, actually self-help books for incarcerated women, right? And then those books went across the world as I was a prisoner. So I used to get fan mail as an inmate. And that inspired me and motivated me to get through those 9 years behind bars that I spent. I was sentenced to 12.5 years, and I ended up actually doing 9 years of that sentence, right? So I feel as though when you're looking to create change, the first thing you have to do is, who is your network, right? And the advantages of building a powerful network, you can receive guidance and good advice from them. You can become more successful because now your resources become their resources. They help provide new ideas. They help you gain more visibility. They help you build your confidence, strengthen business connections, increase access to job opportunities, and gain more knowledge. So I would ask you today, as you think about your why and what you want to do, who is your reliable network that you can depend upon? What resources are available to you, right? Number one on the list is capital, but if you don't have money, what can you do? Let me tell you one of the things I did. I had a lot of rappers that were my clients, so I took a picture in prison with all the pretty girls that I could get next to me, and guess what? I sent it to my friend who's rapper Jadakiss, and he actually posted the picture, and our pictures went viral. But not just going viral just to say we're here. From behind bars, I started a nonprofit organization called Women Over Incarcerated. I wanted to tell the story about the lengthy sentences many of us face as nonviolent offenders, right? So when people think of women in prison, they think of hard, people that are not maybe good people. So when we had these pretty, beautiful glamour shots and all the rappers and the people started reposting us, others were like, oh, wow. What's going on here in prison, and it made them pay attention to our cause. So media and social media access are also very important. Again, it was my network. It was one individual after the other that helped me. I was actually incarcerated with Miss Lauren Hill. She ended up doing 90 days for tax evasion. She became a part of my network. We started actually filming women coming home from prison. And that got me in the mindset of what I do today, which is also television production. Personal skills, right? So what are your personal skills? What can you do well? Me, I learned I could write. So I took my writing into my activism. And then school, I left school. I thought that school didn't matter. I was a multimillionaire. I thought I didn't need school. It wasn't until I slowed down and really was incarcerated that I realized the importance of school. My mom was a school teacher, so from behind bars, I was able to get my associates, my bachelor's, my master's. I started my PhD, and I just recently finished it this June. Family and friends, spiritual congregation, vision, and your action plan. These are all things that are actually related to your resources. Write the vision and make it plain. So for me, this is very important, and I'm going to end over here. Writing things down is really power. So in jail, you know how I really did that time? I began to dream. I got out the building. I would actually write down my goals. I actually wrote down that I would be standing in front of you today, and look at where I'm at. That's the power of manifestation. So when you write things down, it's a power that it sends to the universe to bring you back what you want. So it helps you to see what's in your head, and it illuminates the vision, right? So a lot of times we keep things in our head, but when we actually put them in paper, we're able to see what we're missing. It helps us to set measurable goals. So for me, I said, okay, this year I'm going to create this book. This year I'm going to start this organization. I actually wrote down every single thing I would do, and guess what? I'm living it out today. And writing my plan down also helped me to keep my focus. It sent a clear message to the universe through the law of attraction of what I desire, and it increased my faith. And by me meditating daily on that plan that I wrote down in prison, I'm actually able to live it today. And since I've been home, I created a plan that I use for social media platforms to heighten my visibility. If you guys follow me, I have about 150,000 followers on Instagram now through my heightened visibility. I've gained paid opportunities to create at-risk programs for youth. My network, I got with Yandy Smith, who's another reality star, and she helped me to increase my network. I increased my social capital and gained influence. I've been on BET's American Gangster and VH1's True Crime Story, also CBS's Pink Collar Crimes. I volunteered to help deter at-risk youth from crime. Actually, it goes the opposite way. I created the VIP Empowerment Coalition and empowered thousands of kids to increase their confidence and gain new skills, enhancing their social economic status, helping them to create a legacy. So that is me. And now I'm going to introduce you to my partner. This is actually my life partner and my friend. And he's going to tell you a little bit about the work that he currently does. Let's play his video too so you can just get a feel of him.
There's a chant that I love. It goes indict, convict, send those killer cops to jail. The whole damn system is guilty as hell.
Y'all holding up. We'll be alright because we always is. But I'm feeling like this.
How many mothers have to cry? How many brothers gotta die? How many more times? How many more times? How many
America
more
means racism. Yes. America means KKK. America means white supremacy. America means kill black people and get off.
Take a look around. Can you see it now? Don't be colorblind. Cause when they're killing mine, they'll try to justify. Oh, each and every time.
A lot of their patterns and practices and behaviors ultimately becomes detrimental to society, because most of these young people, if not all, at some point will return to the community.
You think we don't matter, but we do. You got a problem cause the city on fire, but you're quiet when niggas die.
Inmates inside a Brooklyn jail, they're going to spend another night in the dark, in the cold, no heat, and very limited power. And it's been like that for days now, sparking protests, and now there's a response from Mayor de Blasio, too.
Precious black lives, lost in the name, senseless white pride, tears falling from my eyes. How many mothers have to fall? How many brothers gotta die? How many more times? How many more times? How many more marches? How many more times?
When do we want it? What do we
How
want?
many more times?
When do we want it?
This country is supposed to be about the land of the free for all. It has not been free for black people, and we are tired. Don't talk to us about looting. Y'all are the looters. America has looted black people. America looted the Native Americans when they first came here. So looting is what you do. We learned it from you. We learned violence from you.
We ain't slaves, let my people fly. Now it's time, watch my people rise. How many mothers have to cry? How many brothers gotta die? How many more times?
Okay, so without further ado, I'm introducing to you Mr. Angelo Pinto. Give it up.
Thank you. And give me a round of applause, because I figured out how to use the technology. Give me a round of applause. In a very short period of time, I mastered this. No, but give it up for Dr. Jamila Davis first. Give it up. So, Dr. Davis's story is very important, but we have been working at a few universities, and one of the theories that we use or we talk about is this thing called liberation theory, right? And this idea of liberation theory is not only about liberating, transforming society or social settings, but it's also about how you transform yourself, right? How do you transform yourself and use your lived experiences as a tool, as a compass to transform society, right? So raise your hand if you've ever been through anything in life, anything ever happened to you. You know, or has anything happened to you that you said, wow, I wish I wasn't going through this. I wish I didn't have to experience what I'm experiencing now, or this feeling that something that you're experiencing is unjust, right? Or it's wrong, right? There's something about it that doesn't feel right. I'm gonna go back to Dr. Davis. Dr. Davis' story is a great example of a person who's experiencing personal injustice, right? Or experiencing trauma. And as a result of what they experience, you kind of have this option or this moment, this fork in the road where you decide what you're going to do next. It's like, I'm experiencing this thing. Do I let this experience consume me and take me over and become my identity and who I am? Or do I use it to propel me? Right? Do I use this experience to propel me? But as I go through these kind of modalities of change, to think back to Dr. Davis' story, because you're going to see individuals who I'm going to mention throughout this protest, politics, and policy components who were in that situation. They had something happen to them. And they had a moment, they had an opportunity to decide, what do I do with this? What do I do with this opportunity? And we often talk about it in the context of turning a moment into a movement, right? So you get to decide what you're going to do in that moment, but you have to have the awareness to say, I could do something with this. This doesn't just have to be something that is oppressive. This doesn't just have to be something that is a challenge that becomes trauma, right? So we're gonna dive into this. And I will say the organization that I co-founded, Until Freedom, we like to think about the work in that framework, this idea of protest, policy, and politics, right? As these tools for change and leveraging power. So, people who change, you might know some of these people who've done some good work throughout the course of history. And what's interesting, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, but there are people, let's take Dr. King for example. People know who he is. There are people when they talk about Dr. King, and it's true for all these individuals, but I'm just using him as an example, that they say his work actually exacerbated the problem, right? And they say the use of nonviolence created more violence. How so? Individuals would go to a lunch counter to engage, and as a result, they would experience violence. And they say, hold on, wait, if you didn't do that, that violence wouldn't happen. You're exacerbating violence. And I'm not going to dive into that too much, but it's important when thinking about all these individuals and historic change makers, because one of the things that happens when you're creating change, and it's a phrase that movement folks use a lot that I think is important. They always say two truths can exist at the same time. You can be moving and pushing things forward and also creating a new dilemma that you hadn't seen before, right? We talk about it in the movement as in the context of contradictions being created as you do the work. New contradictions that you have to pay attention to and then pivot, adjust. We could talk about that for 20 years, but I just want to give you some of that context when you think about the work, because it doesn't in and of itself resolve the problems. It can create more challenges or can illuminate more challenges that you have to face. But part of the other things we want you all to be able to do is think about your position in this conversation. Your position in the historic arc of change. What's your role in it? Do you have a role in it? Do you think it's important? Do you think you fit into this? Right, as we have this conversation, it's something to think about. Even as you all move through university, right? What is your role? How do you use what you're learning now, this life experience, to create change? Will you use it for that? Raise your hand if you know who rapper Meek Mill is. Show of hands, okay. I know him too. So, rapper Meek Mill, a few years ago, was arrested for a probation violation, right? And he was in jail. And as a result of that, you know, rappers get arrested. It's a thing that happens. But in this moment, you know, he was in a situation where he was in prison and would not be released until he served the rest of his sentence. And the folks who were behind him and people who had invested a lot into him were like, we have to do something about this, right? So they could have simply just hired attorneys and tried to fight the case, but they said something as they looked at the case, they said, hold on, wait, there's something else wrong here. We don't think he should have gotten this violation and had to return to prison, but there's something else here. There's a way in which the system is set up to cause individuals to go back to prison for low-level offenses, right? Then they went further, they said, hold on, wait. He shouldn't have also had the length of sentence that he had. There's other problem. Then they went back and said, hold on, wait, the judge who convicted him was after him. Then they went back and said, hold on, wait, the charges that he initially got were inaccurate. So when they looked at Meek's case and they started to dive into it, it was something that he always knew. They said, hold on, wait, there's something wrong with the way in which the system responded to Meek. And initially, folks came to an organization I was working and said, you guys want to deal with the Meek Mill case? We need your help. We said, should we do this? What's the usefulness of this? And then there were people who said, Meek has a lot of money. He could get lawyers. Go help the kid on the corner who doesn't have help. And we had to think this through, and our analysis was that by assisting Meek, we could create visibility around this issue. Right? We could create visibility around mass incarceration in the criminal justice system that could potentially help individuals who don't have Meek's platform. Right? So we said, we're going to get involved. We had town hall and protesters. We generated mass awareness. He had a petition that had over 300,000 signatures in like 24 hours. So because of who he was and how he was centered in popular culture, people talked about this thing that's been going on to folks for a long time, much more. And people actually were more civically engaged. The number of folks who came to protest, to engage Meek, was through the roof. And we had this conversation in another class where one of the professors said, civic engagement, he said, voting, who thinks it's important to vote? Raise your hand, let me see this. Okay, it's pretty good. That voting is an important thing, right? But this idea that voting is really the least, not just informed, but kind of the least active way in which you can engage in civic engagement. You should vote, but voting is so low on the totem pole of civic engagement. And he said, well, what about protest? It's high. You're in the streets. You're trying to understand and learn the issues. And I've learned this over years going to protests. Some people say, protest doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. We'll do it. But one thing I've learned, not only does protest actually create changes in the case of Meek Mill, but one thing, I take my daughter to protest a lot, it's an educational opportunity. Learn about the issue. You see the people who have real-time impact of the issue. It's a host of impacts. The other thing that happened is what generated a lot of resources around this issue. There was an organization that started as a result called Reform. They raised $80 million and they're now working on this issue. It doesn't mean, as I said before, that they're working on the issue in the way that I would personally like, but they are, and resources are going to this. So the Meek Mill case is a great example of protest creating change. These are some pictures of the protest. That's actually Meek's son, who was at one of the protests. So the other piece, and I mentioned this earlier, that there's real life impacts. People often talk about creating change and movement work, but there are real people who are impacted by these things in real ways, often families most. And we often say, it's a phrase we use in the movement, is that those closest to the problem are closest to the solution. Right? Those closest to the problem are closest to the solution, and very few people are closer to the problem than the families of individuals who experience these things, right? Change. This is another example. So there was a case in Brooklyn called Brooklyn MDC, the federal prison, that we got news that they did not have heat and they did not have lights during the coldest days of winter. It was in 2019. So we said, okay, what are we gonna do about this, right? And what we did was we actually decided to go and engage in protest in front of this federal prison. And we said, we're gonna camp out. We're gonna stay there until the heat and the lights come on. And we heard from all kinds of individuals that guess what, it's gonna take too long, okay? We have to get the mechanics and the engineers, they have to go into the facility. It's gonna take weeks for them to make this change. Go home, stop, you're causing trouble. And we said, we're gonna do it anyway. We're gonna stay. We said, we'll stay for a week, it's all right, we got time. And literally, within 24 hours, lights came on. Heat got fixed, miraculously. We said, oh wow, you guys figured that one out fast. And what happened was, we were generating a lot of attention. We had elected officials who said, because this was in their district, they said, or federal elected officials, they said, you know what, now we have to go come and see what's going on in this facility. And within 48 hours, we probably had 10 elected officials come and visit. The news cameras were there. There were so many families who had individuals in the prison who came from Pennsylvania, all across the tri-state, because they said, I have a loved one in there that I haven't heard from in days. They have a medical condition, and I don't know what's going on with them, right? And it was so transformative. What ended up happening was we created this communication system from the outside with individuals who were actually behind the wall. It was a transformative experience. You could probably go online and find some more about it. The other piece that came out of this was the Bureau of Prisons, which is the federal institution that oversees federal prisons, said, guess what, we want to talk to you guys. We think something was wrong, but we want to fix this. And oftentimes, as a result of confronting these challenges, you do get yourself a seat at the table. This is my mugshot. I went to jail for justice for Breonna Taylor. And actually, interesting story. So, if you look at the dates of when Breonna Taylor was murdered by Louisville Police Department, it was in March of 2020, I believe. March of 2020. Essentially, no one had heard of Breonna Taylor. We received calls from attorneys who were working on the case who said, listen, we need to create some visibility. We went down to Louisville, Kentucky. We had a protest, might have been 20 people out there. There's no video. It was a scenario where it was going to be very hard to create visibility. She was a black woman. So we know that even when women are murdered by police or experience these things, oftentimes individuals are not getting the same kind of attention. We talked about rapper Meek Mill, got a ton of attention very quick. And we saw with Breonna Taylor, almost got no attention. None. People in Louisville didn't know. So we said, we're gonna try to do what we can. We showed up, raised some attention, had a small protest, a few folks came out. That day, we were going to meet another family in Indianapolis. It's about an hour away from Louisville, Kentucky. Before we leave the hotel to go to Indianapolis, there's a video that someone sent to me. And the video was like picking up a lot of steam. It was the murder of George Floyd. So while we're in Louisville, Kentucky, this is happening. And I didn't know how far we were from Minneapolis. So hold on, wait, we should go to Minneapolis. So this is going to be a moment. The reason why I thought that would be a moment is we had seen police scenarios like this, primarily Freddie Gray and Michael Brown and Ferguson. And when they were murdered, it was during the day and individuals taped it. People would go to the site to say, I want to see what happened. I want to see if the person's still there. So I said, this is going to happen in the George Floyd case. People are going to go. Because it was so early in the day, I said, people are going to show up. We should show up. So we figured out how far we were. We were going to try to take a flight. Couldn't. We were 10 hours away. Went to Indianapolis, met with the family, drove to Minneapolis. And got there probably within 14 hours of the video going viral. And of course, we were going to go for 24 hours and leave. We ended up staying for 10 days because the uprisings happened and people took to the streets in ways that not only we had never seen, but the country had never seen. What we were able to do in that moment was use the attention around George Floyd to bring attention to Breonna Taylor's case. And what activists and organizers around the country did was they used the attention on George Floyd and police murder in that conversation to bring attention not only to police murders around the country, but a ton of other issues. Right? So people leveraged a moment and turned it into not just that movement, when people talk about a movement for Black Lives, but many other movements were created and spawned from what was taking place. We eventually, at some point, we knew our big target. We always think about who's the target, who's the person in a position of power who can make a difference or change here. And we knew in this scenario, it was Daniel Cameron, who was the Attorney General. And what we did was we said, all right, we're going to his house. This is the picture here of us going to Daniel Cameron's house, and 87 people got arrested on his lawn. Now, this is happening while the George Floyd uprisings are still happening. This may be a month after. What also started to happen, we talk about these contradictions and kind of how the system responds to what you're doing. We received not only the charge, we got 2 charges, we also got a felony charge for that. Right? So what we saw starting to happen around the country, and we actually experienced it, was individuals who were engaging in civil disobedience were now being charged with felonies. So the system was responding in a way that it was trying to deter people from engaging in civil disobedience. So we want to send a message, don't do this, right? And we did not think we were going to get felonies. I just want to be honest. We did not think we were going to get felonies. We said we're going to engage in civil disobedience. We're going to get a charge. We're going to move through the process. It shouldn't be a big deal. I'm an attorney. We had other attorneys advising us of exactly what charges we would probably get. So there was no way we thought we were going to get a felony charge. So it also surprised us. So it was one of the hottest days in Louisville. COVID was happening, so you see folks have their masks on, and we were packed tightly in the paddy wagons. And when we got released, or when we got to actually the jail, we were told we have felonies on top of all that. And oftentimes when you engage in civil disobedience, I've been arrested so many times, you might be in for a few hours tops. We were there overnight. Kept us. And we were in a city where we never engaged in civil disobedience, so we didn't know what to expect, and we trained folks and told them that, listen, this is what we think is going to happen, but we really don't know. But this scenario shows again how you're able to not only turn protest into change, but how you leverage other moments to influence your particular moment. This picture is important because it's a picture of individuals who actually started to gain a lot of power locally in Louisville. So one of the things we always try to do is, it's challenging when you come into a city because there's a lot of local politics. And some people don't like outsiders coming in, and we don't go places unless people ask us to come. But one of the things that happened was a lot of local folks started to get a lot of power. This gentleman here ended up challenging Mitch McConnell for his seat. Big deal. This sister passed the local no more no-knocks legislation, which ended no-knock legislation, no-knock warrants from happening locally in Louisville. We ended up passing a statewide piece of legislation. And this sister here was actually Breonna Taylor's family attorney, and now will be the president of the National Bar Association. So it started to move power. That's the other thing that happens. And in Ferguson, that happened quite a bit, but it also happened in Louisville. So who remembers the Democratic presidential election? Anyone remember? Happened in Detroit. It happened in Detroit. A lot of candidates. It might have been the second night or the first night, I don't remember. We decided, me and a friend of mine, we decided, being escorted out, we decided that we had tickets. They invited us. They said, I want you guys to come and watch the Democratic debate. We was like, of course we want to do it. And, we said, Mayor de Blasio's here, we got to do something. We should just say something. So when he spoke, we said, fire Pantaleo, fire Pantaleo. We sat down, we took our seats. A lot of folks were engaging in protest at the debate. As a result, we were escorted out, and then when that happened, we created a big scene. And it happened while Cory Booker was speaking. All these challenges happened. But people started to pay attention. Long story short, within 24 hours, Bill de Blasio had to make a statement. Julian Castro, who was one of the presidential candidates at the time, and many others started to speak about it, right? And say how could you not do something in your city that's important and you're running for president? We literally were able to get Daniel Pantaleo fired within 48 hours of doing that protest. We weren't able to do that for years previously. So leveraging the national stage created a moment where we forced the person in a tremendous amount of power to make a decision that they refused to. So the power of policy. So we talked about protests. When you look at de Blasio and what happened at the Democratic debate, that's the context of politics, engaging politics in a particular direct kind of protest, and now policy. So raise the age. New York State at one time was one of two states, North Carolina was the other, that automatically prosecuted 16 and 17-year-olds as adults, which means they were automatically housed in adult jails and prisons. So if you were in New York City, hop a turnstile, steal a book bag, or accused of stealing a book bag, you go straight to Rikers Island, right? The exonerated five, formerly known as the Central Park Five, they were also young people who were prosecuted as adults in New York State. One of the faces during the course of the campaign was a young man named Khalif Browder. He was actually accused of stealing a book bag, spent years on Rikers Island, was assaulted by staff, assaulted by individuals he was incarcerated with, and ultimately tried to take his life while he was incarcerated. Khalif Browder eventually came home, no charges, because he refused to cop a plea. And while he was home, he actually took his life in his mother's home. And it created a tremendous amount of attention for the campaign, and as a result of working close with his mother, we were able to get the governor to commit to doing this. And most legislation can take a long time to pass. It takes 7 years, 10 years. There's people still fighting for legislation. We were able to get this passed within 4 years, which was basically record time having legislation passed. There's a lot of components that went into this, but this just gives you a sense of how you're able to leverage a critical story, right? And again, this other piece, his mother ended up passing away during this, right? Eric Garner's daughter ended up passing away during the fight. So we talk about transforming pain to purpose, using it to inform policy, but of course, there are real-time collateral impacts of individuals. And I think I will end there, because I've talked too much already, but thank you all. I hope you learned some stuff.
So just quickly, because we know you have questions, we just want you to take a look at the steps. I spoke about the why, what's your purpose, and why, analyzing your life experience, your gifts and talents to help you create change, identify your network, assess your resources, And then Angelo talked about clearly identifying the problem you want to tackle, do your research, choose your strategy, create a plan, and take action. So we believe, just like us, that ordinary people have the power to do extraordinary things.
Somebody said we're just all mesmerized by just how hard you both work just using your story to be able to lift up other people's voices as well. Like I love that. I have lots of questions, but I don't think we're running out of time. So I want to give the students the opportunity to ask any questions that they may have. If you don't have any questions, I could fill it in. But if you have any questions, please, raise your hand or stand up. I can bring the mic to you.
We want questions, guys.
Or thoughts.
Yeah.
Or thoughts or comments.
So I really appreciate what you're talking about in relation to trauma and how people can use their life experience and their trauma to create change, those closest to the issue or closest to the solution. I really agree with that, and I think that resonates with me personally. I also at the same time think about how hard that could be, regardless of whatever the issue is. And then so where do you find that balance of, how personally difficult that can be, and then when can and should allies step in who maybe aren't so close to the trauma and maybe have a little bit of extra energy to give to it when you don't? And so how do you balance that?
Okay. So for me, it was, if I didn't actually use my story, then I would really become a victim. I wouldn't be anything of who I am today. So I took back my power. A lot of times we don't want to share our wounds. We don't want to share our marks. But the truth is, a lot of people have went through the same thing you went through. So it's your strength and your courage that's going to give other people courage to use their voice as well. And you always want to use allies. As many people as you can get that went through the same issue that you went through, it's important because you may reach someone I can't reach. He may reach someone that you can't reach. So if we all join forces together, we're more powerful together.
And just quickly, when I was working on the Raise the Age campaign, when I first started my first week, I started doing research around all young people who were prosecuted as adults throughout the country, because every state prosecutes some young people as adults. And what I remembered or recalled during that first week, I was like, oh wow, my brother was prosecuted as an adult in New York State, right? And it hadn't really occurred to me because I didn't realize the reason he was where he was, or the adult facility he went to. I didn't even know he went to an adult facility. I remember him sharing me that he was in there with older people. And then I remember, oh wow, he was 16 years old. And I put two and two together. I said, wow, he was prosecuted as an adult because he was 16 in New York State. And I don't even know if my family understood that's what took place, right? It wasn't until I became more aware of actually how the law was working and how it impacted my family that I realized this happened. And I tried to get him to speak about the experience, but he wouldn't, right? So I think for individuals who are directly impacted, it could be tremendously traumatizing. And sometimes individuals are re-traumatized by telling the story. So it's not always the best thing to do. But I think the other piece that a lot of the work is talking about more now, because we've seen individuals who've lost their life trying to work on these issues, is how do you also mitigate and address the trauma why individuals are using their story, right? It's not enough just for someone to tell their story, because it can be so re-traumatizing that it can be detrimental, but how do you actually get individuals the help they need as they tell their story? And I think in regards to allies, the question always becomes, and I think it was just like for us going to Louisville, you want someone to at least say, come participate. Like, so oftentimes it's useful to wait till you get that invitation.
So everyone in here, they're Master of Public Health students, and a lot of the work that you both do is around criminal justice reform. So I'm just curious to know your thoughts. I know that it's important to include multiple disciplines and have a different lens in addressing certain problems. And I'm curious to know, what would you say to public health students and why public health students, public health faculty and staff should even care about what's happening on the criminal justice side?
I would say mental health is important, obviously, as you guys know, and the stigma that comes with that, and just the need for folks to get services, and there are people who can provide it, but there's not an opportunity. So that alone is just a big thing, and I'll let you tie in.
I don't know if folks remember, who remembers Occupy Wall Street when that happened, right? And so when Occupy Wall Street happened, I was working with this organization called the Campaign to End the New Jim Crow. Who was familiar with the New Jim Crow, Michelle Alexander's book? So the book was just getting big around that time. It was starting to get momentum. And we did a teach-in at Occupy every Tuesday night on the prison industrial complex. One of the things we talked about was how the prison industrial complex was connected to economics, how much they're spending, how it's connected to education, the school to prison pipeline, the trauma to prison pipeline. And then we said, it's also connected to health. Right? We talk about intersectionality, right? This idea that these things are interconnected, the variety of components that make up who an individual is. But even now, when we talk about safety and gun violence in communities, we take a public health approach. That wasn't always the case, but when you look at the work that happened in Chicago and Interrupters, they started to say, hold on, wait, this is an epidemiological issue. Right? So they changed the theory and the lens in which they started to look at this issue and said, this isn't, people now when we talk about the opioid crisis, right? We're not looking at this from a strict criminal justice lens. They say, hold on, wait, we need to broaden our perspective because actually using this lens, there's another phrase we use in the movement or people normally say, it's like, everything looks like a nail to a hammer, right? So if you use this criminal justice lens on the opioid crisis, on folks who are in gun violence, you're going to get similar outcomes, right? But if you change the lens, and I think oftentimes when we talk about public health, it shifts the way in which you respond to these issues, right? But the other piece when we talk about the criminal justice system and folks who particularly spend time in these facilities is that no one has worse health than individuals who spend time in facilities. When you look at the health of those individuals, it's the worst bar none of any demographic. Worse health. My concentration in law school was health law. And what I learned was that what happens when folks return to the communities now is it creates a public health epidemic. Because most folks who go in are coming out. And actually most folks who go in come from certain communities. So the re-entry to certain communities is enormous. Thousands of people returning home to certain communities who now have had public health issues exacerbated. So now these same public health issues, HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, hepatitis C, mental health issues are now coming into the community with no supports to address these health concerns, right? And there's a great book by Harriet Washington called Medical Apartheid, and she talks about the history of medical experimentation. One of the places that this happened a lot is in jails and prisons. There's a book called Acres of Skin where they talk about, many books where they talk about the experimentation that happened on folks who are incarcerated. So it goes on and on. One of the research tools that was used for some work I've done was called $1 Million Blocks. And what it basically showed was that in New York City, and it's true around the country, that some blocks are spending millions of dollars just to incarcerate people, right? But that money does not come back in when folks are re-entering to address public health concerns, right? And then to exacerbate the challenge, individuals who are trying to re-enter don't have access to health care. Oftentimes they can no longer get health care, they call them collateral consequences, because of felony convictions. So the health problems of that demographic that ultimately impacts the community are enormous. So if you don't recognize, it's like most issues, if you don't recognize the root of where some of these challenges are coming from, you can't address some of the symptoms that you see playing out. And I think the criminal justice system, for folks who are working on public health, is key.
Thank you so much. So we're out of time. So I want everybody to give a round of applause again for our guests.
Like one of the top universities in the world. So by you stepping here, you already have influence. You already become like a semi-celebrity. You guys are already starting the work by being here. By accepting your seat at the table, now you're going to gain the influence of others. So I want y'all to understand that regardless of how you feel, I feel like with Professor Parr, she can tell you, and more people will come help support you, but you broke the glass ceiling. How many people applied for the seat
that you guys are
that you're sitting in?
Yeah,
and so get the knowledge that you need so you can change your community, but then change your community here. What things would you like to see? Y'all, you guys should be collectively talking about that. Like, what would make you feel more comfortable? What support do students need? So because people can't give you something that you don't know exists, how can it help you fix something that you're not communicating how it feels? So the fact that you had the courage to say, this is how I feel and I'm uncomfortable, right? That's courage. But now what would make you comfortable? What environment could be created here that would make you feel like you're more at home and give you more power? All right, I want to send you all the positive energy that I can send you, because you're a change maker. You're here for a reason, and don't give up. Before greatness happens, usually the enemy tries to trick you out of your position, right? It tries to make you forfeit whatever it is that you're about to gain. So stay in the fight, because there's something bright ahead. It's just like me with my incarceration. I could have gave up the first year or two and say, you know, it's too much. But I pushed ahead and look at what I am now. So I encourage you to keep fighting, keep going, and know that there's something great at the end of the tunnel. Can I get a hug?
Yeah. My name is Naseem Ashford. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. And watching this really just shows me that there are leaders in my community already that are doing exactly what I want to do. And looking to them gives me a sense of hope and a sense of direction.
Hi, my name is Imana Pasadig. Attending this seminar was very, very beneficial. I feel like it was something that I really needed. It was very inspiring and something that was very different from what we're normally used to seeing here at Yale University. I think one of the things that really stood out to me was being able to utilize our social media platforms to speak about truth, speak about your experiences and make light of it, and be able to develop networks with other people. And that's something that I hope to do with bringing light into situations like for my people in Sudan and the situation that is going on there and the military coup. I hope to bring light into it and bring justice to my people.
Come on, join the group hug. Let's get the group hug. Come on, you gotta join the group hug.